there gamers, this is Callum here, or Caliber, and I'm going to be starting a new, might be a series, might just be a couple, whenever I decide to do them basically. A new thing, just call it a thing, that'll do. A new thing called Things I Hate About, and basically, as a gamer I get very passionate about gaming quite a lot of the time, and quite often things happen in the gaming industry that I disagree with. And there are times when I have opinions on games that I really want to kind of vent to a larger audience. And I think that this would be a good way to do it. Kind of in the same way of when you write a diary, except this is going to be a public thing. Basically like vlogs, but this is going to be me venting my anger at things that happen in gaming. And I have quite a backlog of things to get through, because there are quite a lot of things that make me angry in quite a lot of games. So I'm going to be possibly doing a few of these, and we'll see when things come up. If there's anything topical that I want to do, I'll try and release a video on it as soon as I can after the event. But for now, I'm going to start with something which I have been very angry about for quite a while now, which is Halo 4. Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people, when they actually bought Halo 4, thought that it would be a brilliant idea. I was incredibly happy when it turned out that 343 were going to be making another Halo game. And I thought it was a brilliant idea that 343 separated from Bungie to make this. They have the ability to make it an entirely Halo-based project. And I thought that would make it a brilliant idea, a brilliant game. I was wrong. Now, Halo should be used, well, Halo 4, to be specific. When I say Halo, I'll try and make sure I'm referring to Halo 4. Well, I'll specify. But Halo 4 is a perfect example of how to kill a game series. I don't mean kill it nicely and gently in its sleep. I mean clumsily, by beating it to death with blunt instruments and then setting fire to it. Then maybe throwing it in the river and dragging it back out the river, waiting for it to dry for a bit, setting fire to it again, and then, I don't know, roasting marshmallows over the body. That's exactly what 343 did. They beat it to death with blunt instruments, set fire to it, gathered all the people round, and then roasted marshmallows over its burning corpse for a rendition of Kumbaya. That is what I think they did to Halo 4. See, I told you I get very, very angry about these kind of things. Okay, the first thing that actually made me very angry about this game is the storyline. Or generally, the lack thereof. There was a storyline, I could tell what it was, but I just didn't give a shit about it. In the previous games, I'm not going to say I invested in the storyline. It's not a story-driven game, really. The story should always be a mechanic in an FPS to move from one area to another, and possibly add some kind of character development. And I felt there was character development in there. I felt that there was a character development in characters like Cortana and Keys, and to a certain extent Master Chief. Definitely Arbiter. Having the story of Arbiter I thought was a brilliant idea in Halo 2, and I think it really added something. And I'll be talking more about Arbiter later, because that's another thing I'm going to be going on about for quite a while, possibly. But basically, I understand what the storyline is in Halo 4. I understand all this shit to do with the didact and the library and blah-de-blah-de-blah. But honestly, it took forever to get into it, and by the time we got to it, by the time we figured out what was going on and what the storyline was supposed to be, I honestly couldn't give a shit. I just did not care, I did not invest in it, and then at the end of the game, I just didn't really connect with it. I didn't feel like the storyline had a purpose in the game. It essentially just became the mechanic of moving from one place to another, but that mechanic has to be interesting, and they didn't make it interesting, which was very disappointing, because in Halo before, it'd always been really good. It always made me feel something, towards one of the characters at least. And the second thing that made me really, really angry was that every mission was essentially the same. There was no variation between missions. That was another thing I really liked about having the Arbiter story in Halo 2, is that you were moving back and forth between different perspectives. It meant that there was always something different to do with the gameplay. It made it seem new, and there were new environments. And sure, shooting someone in a forest and shooting someone in a desert isn't really that much different, but it was something. They at least tried. And I felt like in this game, they honestly didn't try that hard. I'm not saying they didn't put a lot of work into the environments. God, they did. But if I'm saying anything, I'm saying they put slightly too much work into the environments. I'm saying that I can see how they might have spent months making these really detailed skyboxes and these really amazingly detailed environments, but you're not going to notice them. I mean, I spent about 5 seconds maybe at the beginning of a level going, ooh, that's pretty, and then it's, now where's something and I want to go kill it. I'm not going to pretend that I pay a lot of attention to the artwork in games, but what I am going to say is you don't have to put as much work into it as people think you do. To make a game beautiful doesn't necessarily mean to make it more realistic, or to make it brilliant. I mean, the cartoony style in things like Limbo, or a brilliant indie game called Knit, which I might be doing a Let's Play of at some point to show you, just to give an example of how brilliantly simple environment design can be. And this was the complete opposite. This was focusing on making it flashing lights and baubles and wow and amazing, and it was just really not that good. It had the opposite effect, if anything. It made us care less about what was around us, because it was just, oh, it's another skybox, oh, it's another tree. You didn't want to look at the environments. I think they misunderstood something there, something very, very basic, about the fact that the type of people who play first-person shooters aren't necessarily the same type of people that appreciate that kind of thing. They have to understand the difference. They're not appealing to gamers. They were kind of appealing to artists there. It was kind of almost self-indulgent. And I respect them, and I respect the work that they did to make that beautiful, but you can do it much more simply than that. You don't have to. And it kind of detracted from the game, if anything. The environments were kind of samey, and no one really paid any attention to them. Okay, and also, I don't think the game should have been about Master Chief. I think they should have just left it. I think that it would have been a brilliant end to the trilogy to have Master Chief in his floating off into space thing. That would have been fine. I would have been very happy if they hadn't made the protagonist Master Chief. I think it would have been brilliant if it had been someone else. If we've already had this thing in the Halo 4, the very opening cutscene is they've brought back the Spartans, they've brought back the Spartan Initiative, and I think that was brilliant. I think you could have had so much scope to make it about one of the other Spartans, and then you could have brought in Master Chief as maybe a sideline, maybe as a character to show up in Halo 5 or 6, God forbid if they make them. I think you could have done a lot more, a lot better development of this universe. This all seems to be very one-sided, one perspective, and I think that it makes it seem a bit kind of flat. It just seems lazy, to be honest, that they didn't want to give up this character. And I understand that, they put a lot of work into this character, and they've tried to flesh him out and give him human emotions and show you what it's like to be this person. And they've done a lot more character development with the story of the Spartans and how they were like taken from their parents at a young age and experimented on and blah de blah de blah. But that doesn't change anything for me. I think that they should have moved on and made it about a new Spartan, made it about something different. And I think there should have been more of a departure. I think if you're going to continue a series, you have to continue it either directly on or have a departure. You can't mess about in the middle, because what you get is what happened with Halo 4. It's like it's trying to be old Halo and new Halo at the same time, and managing neither particularly well. And it was disappointing. Another thing I'd like to point out is some gaping plot points. I mean, there's the whole Cortana rampancy thing, how she's getting less reliable and how she was being slightly corrupted and all that kind of stuff. But this happened before. Does no one else remember the end of Halo 2? When the Flood kind of kidnapped Cortana, and literally the last line I think in Halo 2 was the Flood saying, "Tell me your secrets," or something along those lines, and Cortana saying, flat out, "What do you want to know?" She just doesn't give a shit. And I mean, if you know that AIs are going to start being less reliable, and they're going to start kind of breaking down and doing all this crazy stuff. Like, she almost killed them all in Halo 4 on the space station with the asteroid and all that kind of stuff. She practically killed people. That, in fact, she did. Because of her, she let the Covenant in, and people died. She actually caused people to die, and she'd done it before by helping the Flood. And yet, Master Chief is just like, oh, alright then, come on, pop you back in that little slot in the back of my head and you can tell me things and whisper in my ear. And seriously, someone would have just got rid of her by now. I'm actually with the guy who runs the ship to get rid of Cortana on that. I don't think she should be fixed. I mean, before she went rampant and all that kind of stuff, she still helped the Flood just because she could. I honestly think Cortana is just evil. I'm just putting it out there. It's a stupid idea to have her around. She got rid of her by now. The Covenant is still there. One of the first things they said in development of this game was they were not going to be the main antagonists of the new series. It was going to be a completely separate thing from the original Halo trilogy. Oh god, they lied. I mean, fair enough. They weren't the main protagonists. These bloody Promethean things are. But who cares? I spent 80% of the game shooting Covenant in Halo 4. I mean, the Prometheans turned up every so often, and even then, it was really just pointless. They weren't really the antagonists. I mean, they weren't really the antagonists in this game. It was still the Covenant. I think they were lazy again and wanted an excuse to bring back the Covenant as enemy classes, but just add on other ones. All they've done is they've taken the old Halo, updated the graphics, and just added stuff onto it, like pinned it to the back, like they're playing pin the tail on the donkey, like that kind of stuff. They've just tried to flesh it out, but they've managed it so badly. And Prometheans, they're challenging, but they are too challenging. And it might just be because I'm bad at playing the game. But the thing with the Covenant was that each one was individual, and you had different strategies for taking out different ones. You knew what you could kill with what weapon because you'd experimented with it. And Prometheans, it just seems to be either they explode immediately, or it's just to fill them with bullets. Fill them with bullets for everything, or use a super weapon on them. There is no middle ground. There is no variation. I mean, it's not like things like the jackals in the original. They're very easy to kill, but they have snipers, or they have shields, so you have to try and get around them. And the elites were something which were kind of like mini bosses, and that was good. But now the game's full of elites, and grunts were easy to kill, but they would alert other people, that kind of stuff. Variation in the enemies, and Prometheans, just, I don't care. And the Promethean weaponry was just as bad. There was no variation between that. Or if there was variation, it was to a stupid degree. Basically, I tried out loads of the Promethean weapons, and they seemed to be burst fire glowy thing, firing glowy thing, one shot glowy thing, and the scatter shot, which is just insta-kill. Oh, and the incinerator thing, which was again just insta-kill. There was no attempt to make different kinds of weapons. I mean, it felt like there was a difference between, say, the Covenant carbine and the storm rifle, and the human weaponry was very different, and certain weapons were better against different things, and that just didn't seem to be there with Prometheans. Prometheans just got on my nerves, really. I just didn't really care for them as either antagonists. Their weaponry wasn't that brilliant, and I just didn't like it. Now, there is one thing that I did like about Halo 4. After all that might be hard to believe, which was the idea behind it. I really liked the idea of continuing the Halo series, because Halo series was brilliant, and I loved it, and that's part of why I'm so angry that they managed to ruin it. But I think that The idea behind it was strong, they just executed it badly. That's the story of this game, basically. But through all of it, they had good ideas, but just did it badly. And it's a shame, because it could have been a really good game. It's worse to know that it could have been good, but wasn't. I would rather it would just been a flat-out terrible idea and executed badly and a flop. And I know that there are lots of people out there who love this game. And these are just my opinions. You're free to have your own. But I know there are also people out there that hate this game just as much as I do, for the same reasons, for different reasons, whatever. But I just know that this game could have been good, but it just wasn't. And that was a shame. Certain things in it, things like Spartanops, had great potential. Serialising gameplay over the course of a certain amount of time, releasing new episodes as they go along. That's brilliant. I mean, a lot of games do that with DLC, but this was a different kind of DLC. This was something not necessarily new. I think it's been done before, but it was a great idea, and I think it works very good for first-person shooters. But Spartanops was executed badly as well. The storylines for it were just as bland. And sure, it meant that you had some kind of replayability to this game, other than the multiplayer. I'm deliberately not talking about multiplayer because I think the game has to stand on first person and single player campaign just as much as it can stand on multiplayer. Games that are meant for multiplayer, things like Team Fortress 2 or things like League of Legends, Call of Duty, which is, let's face it, entirely most of the replayability is through things like zombies and multiplayer, and they worked on that really well. And Halo 4, the multiplayer works really well, but I don't think that's enough with something as brilliant as the Halo series, especially when the rest of it was so shit. Spartanops had a lot of potential, and if that had been well written, I would have been very happy to buy a game where you get one episode, and then they release more episodes as they come, and put proper thought into each episode, gives them more time to work on each episode. If the scripting was better, if the storylines were good, I would have loved it. But it just missed the mark so badly. And honestly, I feel very sorry about that. Okay guys, that was things that I hate about Halo 4, and I don't know what else to say really. I might be making another one of these soon. Most of these won't be as angry as this one was. This one was something that I've had building up inside me for a very long time to really vent about. The rest of them are probably going to be slightly more tame affairs. So, I've been Caliber. Thanks for watching, gamers. See you later.